All right, Scott Ryan, nice to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
cool. And thanks for meeting up with me. It's nice to get a little face to face. We've had a few interactions in the past, but all that was like digitally. So this is nice.
Wait a minute, is there something beyond digitally? I thought that was the only way anyone could interact.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You know, it's funny actually in your new book, you just reminded me. You were talking about the attention spans that people have now, with all the social media distractions and whatnot. But that was a concern back when Lost Highway came out too. So you were like kind of speculating, like, is this just like a human thing that we think is elevated, in our current age, or kind of was it always like this? But
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it really is interesting to look back at a
mm,
movie and see people worried about it, and they had no idea like
yeah,
what was to come.
yeah, and we're gonna get into that movie quite a bit tonight, hopefully, and we'll talk about your book that's coming out, which I had the pleasure of reading. I also read your last one, which is the Fire Walk with Me book. So I like your style, I like your writing voice, and I'm certainly going to want to get into a little bit of that too.
Great, I can't
But
wait.
cool. But if you don't mind, can we start with it's not exactly breaking news, but it's a little bit of forthcoming news. I heard you talking about a potential sort of David Lynch encyclopedia. What's that all about?
Yes, so that will be coming out through the publishing company that David Bushman and I run. And we've been actually working on it for, I think like a year
Mm,
already, because it's quite an undertaking. The idea behind it is if David Lynch picked up a camera and directed it, it's going to be in this book.
okay.
We are not going to cover his acting, so something like Lucky would
Yeah.
not be in it. We're not going to cover episodes of Twin Peaks that he didn't direct.
Mm,
Um, we're not going to drill down to like everything, but if it's directed by David Lynch, so that's commercials, music videos, shorts, obviously the movies, hotel room,
yeah.
on the air.
Cool.
And I mean, I don't want to say when it's going to come out because I just have a feeling it's not, but if we had our way, it would probably come out November 2024.
Hmm.
We have a lot of writers working on it. For a project this big, obviously we needed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Daniel Knox, who does the film fests, he did one in Chicago, and this year we're doing another one. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it or not, but I'm saying in Dallas, Texas this year. He's helping me to make sure that we're getting everything that we need, and we have a lot of great writers covering the films. Jeff Lemire has agreed to do the cover, which I'm so excited about because I love Jeff Lemire's work. And one of the things that's really fun about it is because we don't care about anything. And again, I haven't really talked to David Bushman about this, but I don't want it to have a title.
Yeah.
So yes, we're calling it the David Lynch Encyclopedia. And I mean, on Amazon, I suppose it's going to say the David Lynch Encyclopedia, but in the book, I don't want a title. So I told Jeff, like, draw me a cover.
Yeah, that's cool. That must be a nice assignment for him.
Yeah,
Nice
so
little
he doesn't
playground.
have to put like, the works of David Lynch by blah, blah, blah. There can be no text. There can be text. I don't care what he does. He's Jeff Lemire.
Yeah. And we saw it. I know he did at least one Blue Rose mag cover, and it was like the full scope cover front and back. And that was
Right.
super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he
So that'll
loves
be neat.
David Lynch. So
Yeah.
it is an undertaking. And so our goal is to have it come out in late 2024, but we're not going to rush it. If we need more time, then we'll push it back to 2025, because the key is to get everything. That's
Yeah.
our goal. And in the end, I'm hoping Sabrina will take like just one quick little pass over things and be sure.
Mm. Yeah, that's awesome. And who are your bosses over there?
Who are my bosses where?
As far as the publishing The people who are publishing that encyclopedia book.
Me and David Bushman.
So your deadline is set by yourselves then.
Yes, yes.
Do you like that? Or do you ever sometimes wish you had an external deadline?
Deadlines don't bother me in the least
Mm.
bit. I actually get frustrated with my authors who can't meet a deadline. You know, not to jump into the Lost Highway book, but this is a perfect example. Bill Pullman's people kept telling me, yes, Bill Pullman wants to be involved. You know, he was the only major cast member I didn't get. And they kept saying, yes, yes, yes. Well, I set the deadline for me of December 1st. And, you know, I mean, I probably contacted them 11 times. And I mean, they didn't make it to December 1st. I didn't email them on December 2nd. He's not in the book. That's how I get things done, because I live by deadlines.
All right. Yeah. So that's good to know. And have you always been that way?
I think I have always been that way. Yeah. I've been making movies since I was 16 or 17.
Okay.
And so I always finish a project and start the next project. I don't mind ending. Endings don't bother me at all. Wrap it up, do the next thing. I'm already writing my next book now. And that's who I am.
Yeah. Okay. So you've kind of had that personality type from the beginning, or potentially developed it along the way, and then it emerged at some point. I'm an eighth grade teacher, so I have a lot of writers with potential and those who haven't really seen their potential yet. But you know, I get people in the process of development, so it's an interesting like kind of perspective from where I am. Were you the writerly type, or like the artsy type at a young age?
Yeah, I wrote my first book when I was 8 years old. And yes, I mean, it had 5 chapters, but I think it was only like 7 pages. And man, do I wish I had it. I kept it for years and years and years. But I don't have it anymore. But when I was 16, I wrote like my first full novel, and it was my 10th grade English teacher, Mrs. Whetstone, who read it and gave it to the 12th grade English teacher. And I was devastated. Like, what, the 12th grade English teacher? I didn't approve that.
Big.
And she, which of course I hadn't had her yet, she took me aside, and I mean, they ripped that book to shreds. And it was so great. Like, I mean, they made me feel like I was going to be a writer. And I've thanked Mrs. Whetstone many times. And, you know, when I was interviewed by my local newspaper once, I called her out, and then people contacted her because she really treated me like a writer. She wasn't like, look, kid, I have test to grade. So what you're doing with those 8th grade kids, like, you're making a true difference.
Yeah, and you never know. You never know what makes an impact sometimes. You know, one of my favorite quotations is a Stephen Covey quote, and it's like, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, conflict is a sign of life. You see conflict when people care about what they're doing, and that could show up. That could show up in a teacher's critique, or like an editor's critique, or so she said she definitely did a service, you know, by creating that like sort of conflict zone and taking it seriously, maybe almost as seriously as you were.
Well, and she also gave me John Irving. She said that my style reminded her of John Irving, so she gave me A Prayer for Owen Meany. And just right over there is every hardback John Irving book.
Cool.
I'm reading his new book right now, which he says is his last full novel. And of course, I'm no John Irving by any means, but I do mix humor in, and that's what he does. I think that's what she could see in that.
Yeah, and I like, we'll get into the book a little bit later, but I like even reading some interview transcripts that you do with, you know, staff members or cast members or whatnot, and you seem to fall into a pretty good comfort zone, and you know, the humor comes in, and I'm sure that has a good effect on the interview. So one thing I'm hoping to get out of this tonight, just on a personal note, is like, you know, any interviewing tips that I might pick up along the way. I'm gonna have to grab those.
Well, you're already doing a great job, but I can give you my interviewing secret if you'd like to have it, because I do think it truly works. When I interview someone, they are the most important person in the world. And no one else but that person matters for that project. So, for like Fire Walk with Me, when I interview Greg Feinberg, I'm just talking about what was his day. I'm not trying to get a David Lynch story from him.
Yeah.
And I really learned that on the David Letterman book, because I never got to interview Dave, but I interviewed like the HR lady, and I interviewed the stage manager and the writers and all these people. I never asked them about David Letterman. Never. I asked them about their job. What do they do? What's their day like? Oh, how do you do that? And they started telling me things about David Letterman, because now they know I think they're important, and I'm not faking it. I really am interested in that, because I like to see the whole piece of art. And I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, I love that. And it's maybe like a fancy word. You're kind of triangulating your subject, by trying to get like a 360-degree outer view of it. And like in like technical terms from the English classroom, that would be like an element of characterization, because part of characterization is not only how the character like looks and thinks and acts, but it's how others might interact with or react to the character. So you could often learn just as much intentionally or otherwise, on the periphery. Plus these are human beings with lives and jobs, and they're just as important as anyone else you're talking to at the moment. So
and they lent themselves to the project. And I think there's no job too small that I didn't want to talk to. I mean, I reach out to everyone when I'm doing a project. I want everyone and anyone, because I want to capture that. I think in my Fire Walk with Me book, the stories from Ron Garcia are incredible. In this book, it's Deepak Nair. Your readers are going to learn about David Lynch in a way they never have before. And I never asked Deepak about David Lynch. There's not a question in that. I am asking him about his day, what he did. And then, of course, David Lynch is there.
Yeah, I love it. And I think the book is really good for somebody who's not like an expert or a fanatic of Lost Highway. I think it is also good for people who are kind of obsessed with the film. I like it that it's kind of like sort of like a informal like film school, sort of.
Right.
You get so many elements of like film creation that unless you're some sort of insider, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't think that like perhaps the makeup artist is thinking about the set design and not just the outfit of the actress. To get inside like the staff's mindset and their own like internal thinking process it's really cool. I mean, I don't know how else you could learn that. I'm sure you could learn it in film school or from reading, but I guess your book is part of a genre of kind of informal film school books, you might call it.
Thank you. I like that. I'm not an expert on Lost Highway. Like I admit right up in the front of the book that honestly, the first time I ever watched this movie was in 2020 or 2018.
At least in full, at least got through the movie, right?
Yeah, so I'm by no means am I an expert of Lost Highway, which for me made the book a lot more fun to work on than Fire Walk with Me, because I knew Fire Walk with Me so well that, this one was kind of more exciting for me.
Yeah, and this book, I mean, this movie came out in 97, I think.
97, yeah.
And something else happened in your life in 1997. I learned from reading.
Yes, I became the father of twins.
So did that put you into a parental fugue of some sort?
Yeah, I haven't come out of it yet. The kids will definitely back that up. That is for certain.
I have two kids, and I can relate.
Yeah,
So you were parenting at the newly parenting twins at the time this film came out. So I imagine it wasn't too much on your radar at that point.
well, yeah, and that was the thing. I am honest about it. I mean, I only had 3 hours. Every 3 hours they ate. It took an hour for me to feed them.
Mhm.
So I had 2 hours to watch Lost Highway. I had to time everything out. Now I hadn't slept in like 6 months. And I know parents say that, but I really didn't sleep because I had twins. And what they would do is when I put them down, the one would say to the other, hey, I kind of need a good night's sleep tonight, but I don't want that son of a bitch to sleep. Would you mind waking up in the middle of the night? And they'd be like, no, yeah, you sleep. I'll get it tonight.
Yeah.
And then I'll sleep the next night. Yeah, don't worry about it. So they made sure I never slept.
Yeah, it's highly
And
coordinated. You know that.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I watched Lost Highway the first time, I ejected that tape and said, this is crap. I mean, it just was not for me. I was not in the right mindset to watch the movie. And I just never went back to it. I never went back until I was doing the Blu-rays. I always just was, I watched everything else, but for some reason, Lost Highway, I just had that feeling like, it's horrible. And I was quite wrong about it. I'm wrong sometimes.
Yeah, I would agree. But I would also agree that it does tend to be sort of sometimes an afterthought as far as like within like the Lynch stuff, the Lynch canon. Many people would not agree with what I just said, but it's often sort of like dragging along as far as mentions. And you even say that a little bit in the book, that it's maybe one of the lesser appreciated or I don't know, maybe more misunderstood or like more forgotten of his
Yeah.
films. Would you say that that's true? Am I paraphrasing you correctly?
No, it's definitely true. That is my opening, either in the introduction or chapter 1. That's where I come in, where I go through each film to show why I think this is his most forgotten piece of work. And I think I've convinced most people that I'm right after they read it, because at first they'll, David Bushman, who's my editor, he was very upset with this. He said, that's not true. And other people were the same way with me. But then when they see how I break it down, I think I win. But
Yeah.
we're not here to win or lose.
I'm gonna try to avoid like any spoilers at all. So that might have been like the tiniest one. But
Mhm.
and I'm also gonna look down once in a while because I do have like a ton of questions. And you talked a little bit about your path, at least the start of your path as a writer. But can you maybe like 1 or 2 minutes, 3 if you want, can you kind of give us the trajectory from like 16 to now? Is that possible to like chart that path?
Sure. 16
Yeah.
from now in 3 minutes. And go.
At least in terms of like the literary or like the publishing type stuff.
Well, sure. The publishing stuff is easy. I was never published from 0 to, I don't know, 40 or 43.
Hmm.
I don't know what year the Twin Peaks fan phenomenon came out. That was actually, or maybe it was the Sondheim review. I've wasted so many of my seconds trying to be honest and remember,
Yeah.
but I think the first time I was published might have been the Sondheim review. But either way, it was right around the same time, which I would say was about 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. But before that, when I was a kid, I wrote movies, and I pretty much did that till I was like 38. Like I did a whole series of Curb Your Enthusiasm episodes where I play myself,
Yeah.
but I'm basically the Larry David thing. I did a bunch of CDs where I wrote songs and my cousin sang. I made documentaries. I mean, I never thought I was going to be a publisher, and I never thought of nonfiction. I wrote a novel about working at Arby's when I was in college. When I graduated college, I sent it out everywhere and it didn't get picked up. It's called Life in the Fast Food. and it was all about me working at Arby's, which I still think is the greatest thing I ever did in my life, was running that drive-through. That's what I was best at.
Oh,
But
you were actually at the window. I'm going to pause the clock
oh yeah, okay.
because I want to like zoom in here. You were at the window?
Heck yeah, that was the place to be. I was a spectacular drive-through attendant.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of regulars?
Yes, of course.
Did you
Yeah.
know them by Did you know them by voice?
Um, I would say I wouldn't, I don't know that I knew them by voice because the system was horrible. Like that was really back in the
Yeah.
time. But like there was Mrs. Maxwell House was a customer. Like I knew them by names I gave them.
Oh, okay.
There was the fish lady. You know, there were the people that would come in when the 99-cent, you know, there'd always be the coupon person. I mean, I tell a lot of these stories on my podcast, Scott Luck Stories. I have a lot of my Arby's stories are out
Cool.
there. I don't know if that's still around because I think all my podcasts has got deleted, but so yeah, I've been doing this stuff. But I never thought of nonfiction, and you know, it's so funny because I think back like, oh, why didn't I start writing about Twin Peaks back then? Like, and start a website and do all those things. It just never occurred to me.
Yeah.
I really didn't even know anyone knew about Twin Peaks or even cared about it.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have like a little like social network in the real world, like in the screen world. I know you do, but in the real world, not so much.
No, not back in the day. No, I didn't know anyone who watched it.
Oh, okay. And
I don't even think I ever even met anyone who watched it. No.
Which is interesting because, you know, as somebody who was kind of like doing various creative or artsy type endeavors, Arby's included, you'd think maybe you'd cross paths, you know, with somebody else. But
I just didn't.
not.
You know, and I was invited to the first Twin Peaks Fest because I bought the Star Picks cards, and I think they got my address from buying that.
Mhm.
And I remember getting that in the mail, but I mean, I was 23 maybe. I didn't have the money to fly to Washington and all that stuff. And I think about all the time, how would have life changed if I'd have gone out there? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I often like to think about Larry David dropped into the world of Twin Peaks and just kind of like set him loose, or even like the Curb, you know, the Curb version of Larry, which he says is like that's the man he wants to be, you know.
Right.
Well,
that's
I just love
me.
Imagining. Yeah, I love imagining.
That's basically me at
around.
these events. I don't know if you've ever come to an event. I was just in Snoqualmie and I hosted like 5 or 6 panels. And if you ask the people who were there, it was pretty much Larry David. That's sort of my go-to public persona.
Yeah, that's funny. I was going to say something like that. I guess you doing your reenactments and whatnot is the closest we're going to get to Larry David in Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Speaking of persona, I was interviewing John Thorne one time, and he had a little side comments about you, and it was something along the lines of like, you know, if you look at Scott's persona, you might get one impression, but like behind the scenes, you know, he didn't call you a madman, but he said like this guy gets things done, you know. And I imagine that's a pretty accurate assessment in your opinion. And do you like having that sort of dual face, so to speak?
Of course, I would never be honest or true on the internet. I always think it's really funny when people think that I am that person. But I'm a comedian at heart. So I'm just playing, and I don't really consider the internet to be real. You know, like I like to, like Courtney and I will be mean to each other, and Melanie Mullen, she always throws my books away, and we'll post that stuff. Like to me, that's fun. I would never go on and tell the truth. It just would never happen.
And that is why.
I I think because I'm a comedian and you're supposed to be funny first. Like I like making strangers laugh. That is my favorite thing to do, whether I'm there or not. Like sometimes I just drop something out there knowing it's going to go out and it's going to tickle me. And also I kind of think I'm a professional, and it's like I do want to be professional as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, that makes sense. It's funny, like I would say as soon as as recently as 5 years ago, the concept of like obviously the screen world is not the real world. Like obviously, like that was super obvious 5 years ago. It feels less obvious
Oh, it's less
these days now.
obvious.
Yeah,
I mean, we're getting so far off topic. Please feel
totally. Yeah.
free to delete this story. But I did a thing on the internet probably like 4 years ago called 30 Shakes in 30 Days, where I said I was drinking a milkshake every day for 30 days.
Mm.
And then I would get more upset as the 30 days go on, like, oh, I'm so sick of milkshakes. It's making me sick. It was a bit.
Yeah.
I've never gotten that kind of reaction for anything. Like I could get a Cheryl Lee interview,
Mm,
okay,
mhm,
and
mhm.
get less likes. People were saying, "Why are you doing this? Stop it. You're going to get diabetes." And it was a bit. I was just playing. But I carried it out, and it was just so interesting to me how people just took it as serious. Like to me, it was obviously, why would I force myself to eat ice cream every day? And they
Yeah.
were like, "Is this a new diet? That's not a good diet. You're gonna," I don't know. So yes, you are right. People just honestly do take it as being serious.
Yeah, and then there are other people who they have the entertainment mindset, and that's motivating, I suspect, and that's motivating their actions under the surface, but sometimes they're just provocateurs, sometimes they're just stirring it up for this or that reason. And
Definitely, and I just don't engage with those people. Um, I don't really consume social media. I create. I always say I'm a content creator. I
yeah,
consume very, very little. I schedule all my stuff out once a month. I'm never on social media because I'm writing. I'm working all the time. Like people,
yeah.
like while everyone else is having fun, I promise you, I'm working that day. I'm
It-
writing.
are you having fun while writing?
While writing, yes, I always have. Yes, like right now, I'm writing a book about '90s movies, and I'm just
Mm.
loving it. It's all I want to do. That's all I want to do.
All right, cool. My daughter who's 12, and my other daughter who's is she 9, or I think she's 9.
It
Anyway,
changes every year.
they'll be into it because they're gonna want to read that book in a couple of years because they're already kind of exploring that era.
Really?
Yeah, well, mainly through music.
Uh-huh.
My wife is constantly playing music, and we're like 90s kids, so a lot of music from that era. And
The '90s
well,
were
earlier, a lot of Smiths, a lot of The Cure. So it's
great.
funny that like my 12-year-old is starting to get into that.
And that's fun. It's
Yeah.
good when kids, I think music is so important for kids. Um, there is like a throwaway line that my kids were listening to Angelo Badalamenti since the day
Yeah.
they were born, but it's really true.
Mm.
I always have music on all day long. I don't watch TV, I don't watch the news, but
Yeah.
music is on. Music is always in the air. How did I miss
Isn't
that quote?
it?
I should have
And
gone there immediately.
and something I have written down here on my paper is the question, are you a musician? And based on what you said earlier, I assume so.
I play the piano.
Okay. Oh yeah, I've heard that. That's right.
Yeah, so I do, and I'm no good, and people get mad when I say that, or they'll be like, "You can't say that." But I have no
Hmm.
talent. I have a ton of love for it. So, I mean, I can play a little bit, but I'm not perfect. I could never play with someone else. I can't count, but I love it. To me, music is the most, it's just the greatest thing in the world.
Would you say, as a general rule, you are more, and I hope this isn't hope this isn't a bad question. Are you more like talent laden, or are you more like passion laden?
Oh, I'm definitely more passionate.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, everything is because I study, like I work at it. I've studied comedy since I was a little kid, like watching Johnny Carson and David Letterman. And, you know, um, I'm not that fun to watch TV with. Like my wife and I watched Chris Rock's new stand-up last night on
Yeah.
Netflix, and I paused it like 4 times to like say how that joke worked and how he's moving this around. And
Oh, okay. All right.
and I
get it.
actually said, like, God, I would love to write a book about comedy, but
Mhm.
I don't know that I have the contacts to do it.
Hmm. I'm going to hold off on the question that I was going to ask. It's just about like developing contacts and whatnot. But
Mhm.
let me ask something possibly for my students or even my own kids. People who like to write, they feel like they might have some potential future creating in some way, whether it's voice creating or writing creating or, scripting things. Um, do you have any like insight into non-obvious ways possibly to like make a living, make some money out of that? Because kids at the age of my students, they think, oh, I'm going to be an author or like kind of nothing. What are some things that maybe the average person doesn't really know about?
You better give me a time limit on this one too. Now,
Okay.
well, the first thing is you're not going to make any money ever,
Start
no
there.
matter what happens. There is no money, so let that go. But keep doing it. Like you just keep doing it, and it's not about money. And also, I don't even think it's about anyone reading it. Like it's about the act. That's all it is. It's about that act. So I'm watching 6 Feet Under. I've never seen it before.
Ah,
And
that's, by the way, that's probably my second favorite series behind Twin Peaks. But
I know everybody's been
yeah.
saying I should have watched it forever ago, but I just never had. But so
Mm.
we're watching it. And in season 2, one of the characters is writing a book, Rachel. And she had this scene and she was like, I'm going to write a book. And she got a thing out and she typed and she's like, and then she deleted and she's like, and she died. And then she got up and I'm like, no, that's not how. There's no like process. Like it should be coming out of you because
Mm.
you can't. It's like the Garmin Bosia in The Return. It's puking out of you. And if you don't have that, then it ain't for money. It ain't for fame. Nobody reads. Nobody cares about books. Nobody's interested. And that's okay. I don't even care about that stuff. I don't look at any of that. So that would be what I would say. You just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. I've never not had a project since I was, I don't know, at least 16.
That's one of the best pieces of advice, the project stuff that I had ever heard, which was basically like have a project, like at all times, whatever it might be. It could be like a little. It could be like a little, like interpersonal, or like a persuasion, or like a friend making experiment that you're playing in your own mind and nobody else knows. Like maybe you're experimenting with body language or something, or it could be, you know, building a lamp or something, or like, one of David Lynch's type projects or whatever it is. But if you have some sort of project cooking, food, whatever, really related to anything, well, one, like that's the best way to avoid depression, I think, or it's up there.
Mhm.
Or because depression is maybe sometimes, not often, maybe sometimes it's related to like a feeling of kind of wandering a little bit, or sometimes aimlessness. Of course, there are many other factors involved,
Of course.
but having a project is like it's one of the best ways to stay either on an even keel or maybe even rising above an even keel. So that's nice to hear that you always have something cooking. Did you learn that, or was that just sort of innate?
I think it was in me.
Yeah.
It's just in me. Like ideas come and they sit in me, and I just know they need to come out. Like, and that's how I know. Like, if something happens and then it flips away, it might be this short thing. But if I really sit on it and sit on it, then I'm like, oh, I got to do this. And I've just been that way forever.
And it's like the ideas kind of moves from your head into your body, or it just kind of stays as a mental thing, or it's parked in a notebook somewhere, or like
Unfortunately, I don't write anything down, which is like the dumbest thing because there's so many things that I've lost. Um, they just swarm in my head. I mean, I'm thinking all the time, like, and I'll just start laughing because that was funny. I'm like, oh, I know that's funny. And it was kind of weird. Did you happen to see the Harold Smith Stay and Play in that I did during the pandemic?
No.
So it was this big Twin Peaks thing where I got like 10 Twin Peaks actors and it was online. And I did skits that we filmed ahead of time. And it was weird because all my Twin Peaks people, they were like, how do you know how to do that? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I've been doing this forever. Like, that's what I do.
Yeah.
This stuff, analyzing Lost Highway,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
new. Being a jackass on camera,
Yeah.
that's what I do.
That's home. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, my older brother John is very much like that. I think you guys have a lot in common. He was writing murder mysteries at 8 years old. He still has a few finished, mostly in script form, with like our grandfather, who was a real detective. Like
Oh,
he was the main detective in the story, and he would always like gather up folding chairs and like set them up in the yard, and basically like gather the neighbors to create some sort of happening, whatever it might be. And he was always kind of producing things, putting things together, making them happen. And he's a producer now, so
so there you go.
yeah. So it was like always in him, like coordinating.
Mhm.
He's a contestant producer, where basically he has to take like game show contestants and find them, and then like kind of prep them, and then like during commercial breaks he's out there chatting with them, keeping them
Right.
comfortable. So that's
Uh-huh.
pretty cool. Yeah, but I mean, he had it in him from the start.
And I think that's how it works. So that's what I would tell, if there's someone in 8th grade who's writing and that's part of it, I think encouragement helps. But whenever I talk to a class about writing, I always tell them, if you're thinking about money, it's not there in publishing. It's just not. It's everyone makes more money off my book than I do. That will always be the case. And that's the way the system is set up.
Yeah, and your pay comes, not to sound trite, because I don't mean it that way at all, but your pay comes in various forms, I would imagine, in addition to monetary. So how do you feel you're getting paid in terms of like pride, confidence, satisfaction?
I don't experience any of those emotions. I mean, I get to do amazing things. I think that's the thing. That's what I look at. I get to do things that I never thought I would get to do. I mean, never in a million years. There was no way that I was going to meet Cheryl Lee.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked to Patricia Arquette. Do you know how many times I've seen True Romance?
Yeah.
That's insane that I get to do those things.
Yeah, and you both had a good time. That was clear enough. You were
Yeah, we were playing.
You were going deep. You were playing. It was a bit of a mix of everything. So yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, I mean that's what's incredible.
I want to follow up with just a couple of publishing questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Can I put you back on the clock?
Yeah.
What I wrote down here is like maybe in like a 2 or 5 minute explanation.
Uh-huh.
How does a book like your recent book, like how does it happen? Kind of like from roots to fruits, sort of like from the the root of the idea to the actual blossoming. Can you walk me through that in just a few minutes? Like,
Sure. I mean, the Lost Highway book, I don't know if that's a good one
You could pick a
to
different one
do,
if you want.
but I feel like the Letterman book is a better story. Because with the Letterman book, then Dave's last night, there was a montage that the Foo Fighters did,
Mhm.
and they showed clips, but the Foo Fighters played live. Now, I've been making movies my whole life. To match something is really hard. And they played live and the clip matched. That really got me thinking. I spent a year and a half tweeting to Barbara Gaines for an interview because I wanted to know how they did that.
Mm.
That's impossible. And I kept wearing her down. And eventually she said, yes, I did the interview. I learned so much more. And she said, well, then you got to talk to the editor. Randy Grossack was in this the whole time. You want her email? I said, yeah, I want her email. So I interviewed her. And then she said, well, you got to talk to the person that booked the Foo Fighters. Well, then all of a sudden I had 4 or 5 interviews and I said, I feel like I'm getting something here. And then it was like the last 6 weeks of Dave were so interesting. So I started putting that together and thought, oh, I could write a little bit about each episode. And I had a book. So I put that together. And then I thought, these people had never given an interview. And I was friends with David Bushman, who worked at the Paley Center. And I said, I want to publish this, but I want to own it.
Hmm.
And he said, well, what if you and me just start a company? And I said, okay, how are we going to distribute it? So we started to take meetings, and these places didn't want someone who had one book. They actually said, we don't care about one book. We care that you'll have $1 million in sales per year. And I was like, I've got a book about David Letterman, like $1 million. What?
Mm.
And it was pretty much that way everywhere until we met one guy who loved Dave.
Yeah.
He owned that company. He wasn't as big. We said, well, we'll get other books. We have other books cooking up, but we didn't.
Yeah.
And then that guy bought it. We started the Women of Lynch book, which was our second book. Because I mean, you go back to David Lynch. I knew we could get a book. That company was purchased by the largest distributor in America. And in that boom, David Bushman and I have a publishing company that has the largest distributor. And then we just started picking at people. So that's sort of from idea of sitting there in my underwear that night at 12:30 when Dave went off, saying, how did this happen, to that the Letterman book was all over the country.
And you're saying 12:30 the night of the final.
Yeah.
Yeah. How cool is that? You know, that one thing ended and something else started just like that. And you didn't have any sort of endpoint in mind necessarily, right? It was sort of just.
I just wanted to talk to Barbara Gaines. That's all I wanted to do. But I am an idea person, and I am a hustler. And I don't mind work. So those things all come together. I don't know if that, but to me with Lost Highway, honestly, why I do Lost Highway, because I got the Patricia Arquette interview. I mean, that's why. Glenn Gordon Caron, who did Moonlighting, which was my other book, I knew he did Medium with Patricia. I'd wanted to interview her my whole life.
Yeah.
He set that up. And once I had a Patricia Arquette interview, I'm like, let's do a Lost Highway book. So that one was sort of just letting the opportunity create the book.
Yeah. So you feeling pretty confident these days as far as
No.
as far as
no, I have never been confident ever.
In terms of a I don't know, industry, or in terms of like a realm that has probably lots of highs and lows in terms of even just like the artsy stuff in general, which people could take a lot of hits in between successes. With all that, and I actually picked up a lot of that from the Patricia Arquette interview, which was really interesting. The mixture of like strength and fragility and confidence and like worry and everything in between that people go through. Have you experienced that sort of like wave of any emotion possible? You've felt it. Now that you have this book coming out, do you feel like
No.
pretty good about yourself? You like yourself?
No.
Is there anything we need to talk about?
No, I have never. No, that isn't me at all. No, no, I would never feel good about myself because of something that I did. That's not how things work around here. I'm paddling, I'm going, when the books come, I don't even really look at them. I put them up on the shelf. And like I said, my brain is in the 90s book because that's what I'm writing. And I don't look back, and I certainly do not get more I'm a better writer.
Okay.
No doubt. I'm a better writer now than I've ever been because I'm writing every day and I'm working. But this doesn't lead to happiness. Please.
See,
do you want another answer? I'll try this. Yes. Yes.
no, I'm sitting here and I'm teasing apart the comedy from the reality. And are you happy working?
Yeah, I always have to be working. Yes, of course.
Do you have within like the Twin Peaks or the Lynch sphere, the Twin Peaks verse, whatever, you feel like you have like a certain kind of role or like a certain kind of slot you fit into or that you've carved out or whatnot? And does that bring you any pleasure or anything like that? What I'm saying is you probably
let me just ask you, did Emily Marinelli put you up to these questions?
No, I'm just improvising, honestly.
No, that's just for her. I know in the Twin Peaks world, I feel like I don't really even have a part in the Twin Peaks world. John Thorne has been in the Twin Peaks world forever. He is Twin Peaks. Brad Dukes has the greatest Twin Peaks book that there is. No offense to all of my friends who have Twin Peaks books, but Brad's oral history came out of nowhere when no one was doing that. And like the Twin Peaks boys, the Twin Peaks Unwrapped boys that are covering Twin Peaks all the time, they're all part of that. I'm not a part of any of that.
And yet you do have the magazine,
mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna put you back on the clock if you don't mind. And and actually, kind of from a little personal motivation, not motive, but I messaged you, or maybe just like the internet in general one day, and I said the Blue Rose magazine issue I'd really like to see would be like a Twin Peaks: The Return innovation issue. So, because one of the things that I think about The Return is that like anything that could be done with film or with narrative or with storytelling, like, obviously that's a mix of many things going into it. They're almost all, at least to my like not naive brain, they're all like innovative, it seems, in terms of like how time is used or how the plot could be structured, the point of view, the use of sound. Like you list it, the acting choices, you list it, and it's like there's something really innovative going on there. So I messaged and I said it'd be cool to see a Blue Rose Mag issue that where each writer kind of takes on one of those elements, and like digs into the innovative aspect of it. And I was just kind of playing around with that, and you messaged me back saying like somebody needs to guest edit or something, like just joking around.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know what I was going to respond.
Yeah, I know. No, it was you were just being playful, but that led me to think, how does an issue like from once again kind of like from roots to roots, how does one of the issues of the Blue Rose mag sort of come about? Can you tell a quick story maybe of how that
Sure. I mean, it's hard. Up till now, I really was quick, and now you've thrown me because I haven't thought about the magazine in a while, so I have to get my brain back into the magazine. I don't know that I don't even remember when we were doing 4 a year. We used to do 4 issues a year. How did I do
you know,
4
let me
issues a
rephrase
year?
I'm going to rephrase the question slightly.
You're bringing me back. You're bringing me back to the pressure. I mean, honestly, I felt like something presented itself all the time. There was something there. And then John pretty much did what he always wanted to do. John would have an idea. I don't think I ever gave John an assignment one time in my life. I can't imagine that. But John was working on something, like he'd be like, I got a new thing about Audrey. And that's what John was going to do. And sometimes maybe I asked Courtney, but I feel like Courtney would just say, I want to do this. And I would say, okay, great. And I always interviewed everyone. It's kind of funny because I think this is true, but I don't think I've ever written about Twin Peaks: The Return one time. I wrote one article about the pilot where I referenced it. And then John and I just did one about the legacy on other shows, but everyone kind of just pitched their own thing, and then people submitted things. If someone submitted something and if John and Courtney approved it, then it went in. It's just that time was ticking. We had to get one out every 4 months, and you just did it, and you had to hit that date. And they had to be 24 pages, and they had to get out. And then I had to stamp them and do the labels and buy all the stamps and get the envelopes and stamp them and go to the post office and stand in line and go through and fill out customs forms and then start the issue again.
Yeah. And I don't know what you think about that, but when I know 1 or 2 times you've posted like little pictures of yourself licking stamps or whatnot, or with big boxes of magazines or books. And I think that's really interesting as like just a little moment in time, a little snapshot, because people aren't necessarily thinking along those lines. They're thinking of the final product. They're enjoying the glossy pages and whatnot, and not always are we thinking about like this dude's at his dining room table, like licking these stamps. And that's sort of the reality of it too, right?
Believe me, nobody knows what I went through to do the Blue Rose magazine, and I'm not asking anyone to care. Good Lord, no, please. I'm not asking for that at all. It was a pleasure and a privilege, but online people are mean. And people would say the meanest things, and they just don't understand. Like, we're not Amazon. This all happened out of my basement. It happened like, I just had this idea. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a magazine? I didn't know how to print. I never printed anything in my life. I learned how to do it. I didn't know how to ship it, and people are mad about postage. I actually don't work at the post office. They actually make up the price for what it costs. Like, it was all crazy. And I always thought when people were so mean online, if they saw where this happened, they would still be mean, but they would understand that I'm not Amazon. And we weren't like, rolling, like, we did really well. You're right. There were boxes and boxes, and it wasn't enough to pay for it. Like the last 4 issues, we went in the hole because paper is so expensive and shipping is so expensive. And, I got like, these are my labels for the Lost Highway books. Like, I got to get all this stuff out. And then people yell at you because you're taking the stuff in. Did he say I was on a clock? I think he said I was on a clock, didn't he? And I think I went over the clock. And I don't post those videos. I post me singing and dancing because it's a privilege to get to carry the weight of Twin Peaks for people. And I love doing the magazine. We had to take this year off because, frankly, paper is so expensive right now. I don't want to sell that magazine for more than $7, but I mean, we have to sell it for 10 and we're losing money at 10, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just so expensive.
Yeah. Business is very difficult at times. And nowadays, many businesses are facing similar problems. Yeah.
But I just want to say, because a little bit,
Hmm.
I want to say, continue being mean to me on the internet. I'm not asking people to not be mean. Bring it. But we really are just a mom and pop shop.
Yeah. Now I know a lot of people who they like energy in any form, whether it's good energy or bad energy, because they feel like they will take the energy, reshape it, maybe internalize it and use it in some way. Do
Well,
you find like you're one of those people?
Fiona Apple says, be kind to me or treat me mean. I'll make the most of it. I'm an extraordinary machine.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite songs, and certainly something that I live my life by. What all goes on out there has nothing to do with me, so I don't get involved in it.
Yeah.
But I think even people who have been in the magazine don't realize like how hard it is to pull this off. And we never missed a deadline. We never didn't come through with the magazine that we said we would. We did 17 issues. I'm committed to get to 20. I really want there to be 20 issues. The magazine isn't over. We're just kind of seeing, can postage come down a little bit? Can paper come down?
Yeah, and it's not like Twin Peaks is not going to be relevant, in the future, and
Right.
it's even the return. Yeah, and this is fun. Talking about all these things. Can we just talk a little bit about the new book, if that's all right?
Yeah,
with you?
definitely.
Yeah, and I have it set up to show like the cover, so give me just one sec. And I do like the look of that. And I imagine you do too.
Yes, Peter Deming gave me those.
Yeah, which is super cool. And then there's that guy with the two first names.
Uh-huh.
And then there are some accomplishments. I would say accomplishments. I would say things to feel good about, but you decide for yourself. You do you. And that's pretty cool. And I know for one thing, my brother would like a lot of these books, and he has not watched Twin Peaks yet, but he's a big Moonlighting fan, big time Letterman fan, basically a TV fanatic since day one. So
yeah, I mean, my Letterman book is by far the best David Letterman book that there is, and it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with those interviews. I mean, those people have never talked before, and the story of how they got that last show out, I still have never read anywhere else except my book. And I think that's crazy that it's just never covered. It's kind of a crazy story. So your brother would like it.
Yeah, I wonder if he has it. Actually, he might. If it's okay with you, I'm gonna read a small quote from the forward to the new book, and this is just a little excerpt from Matt Zollner's Sites. Is that okay? It's only 2 sentences.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna.
You can read 4 sentences if you want to. There's no copyright charge on.
So he wrote, every attempt to pin lost, and it's a really nice forward, by the way, and what a good writer he is. And he wrote, every attempt to pin Lost Highway's meanings down to a fixed definition or fixed interpretation is bound to end in failure, because the entire construction is permeable on both the narrative and symbolic levels, in a way that obliterates all rational thoughts that viewers try to apply to it. And that's a nice quote, both about Lost Highway and also about a lot of Lynch's work. But yet we still try, right? We still try to pin it down or sometimes interpret it. And you feel like you've gotten somewhere in that regard, yeah?
I do. But like he's saying, you could never get everything. You cannot explain everything. But I think the overall idea that this is in his head is pretty much, I mean, that's what's going on. That's a very Lynchian thing anyway, to split your character off. I mean, he does that quite a bit. So I think so. I feel confident with my reading of the movie.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I was kind of bouncing back and forth between the book and the movie, just because it's been a crazy schedule the past 2 weeks, and that was what I was able to do, and that enhanced the movie quite a bit because I had only seen it once before when I went through my initial just like Lynch everything binge in 2020, and I dug it. I liked it a lot, but I hadn't really thought of it much since then. And I didn't totally get it, that's for sure, on my first viewing. So bouncing back and forth between the book, including the interviews in the book and the film, was really a nice experience, including even things like I was saying earlier, noticing things about how the makeup was done and how the makeup possibly relates, not just to the outfit, but to the vibe at large, including like maybe even scenes that come before and after it. Just like kind of insider filmmaker stuff was present while I was watching the storyline as well. So it created like I guess a richer experience. But Lost Highway is the title of the film. And what does the Lost Highway mean?
Well, I mean, if you drill it down, it's the hotel that they're at. I mean, there's certainly that. It's the Lost Highway Hotel, which I never really considered. Does the Lost Highway Hotel actually exist? I mean, I'd have to think about that. But I mean, to me, as I say in the book, and I feel like this also goes with the soundtrack, the whole movie's just a car chase. So, I mean, that is the highway that he's on. I mean, and Deepak even backs me up with that claim as well, that the movie begins and ends basically with the police chasing him.
And Deepak was pretty much, he was kind of in the Sabrina Sutherland role at that point, right? At that point in the
Yes, he was Sabrina's boss.
Yeah. So he would have obviously some pretty reliable insight. And
definitely.
Yeah, and I always wonder, because people working on a project, their main job is to do their thing, like give your contribution as best you can. And so I think about like the actors in Twin Peaks, for example. Why should they necessarily have the answer? Not that there's one answer, but why should they necessarily have like the full vision of things more than people who are watching it or perhaps like rewatching it? Because their main job is to do their job. This is your role, and like do it as best you can. And so I don't think the people who work on it necessarily have total insight, but obviously, they're close to it. They would have. And Kyle MacLachlan, I know he read the full script with a pot of coffee of The Return, the script that I would love to see. But,
everybody would, man.
Yeah, but Deepak was obviously he had super close insight to things. So
yeah, and I always enjoy talking to the actors, of course, but to me, they're not always the best interviews. I mean, in this one, like you said, the makeup artist, Debbie Zoller, you get so much more from her. The crew people usually know a lot more of what's going on and are good interviews.
Yeah, and that's the case in a lot of different professions. Psychogenic fugue, which is a term that anybody who knows Lost Highway has heard that term, maybe tried to look it up or whatnot. What is your understanding, not to be confused with parental psychogenic fugue, but psychogenic fugue, perhaps in the Fred Madison sense? How would you define that or explain it in your own way?
I mean, I am just not a therapist to say what it really is, or even if it, I have no idea what it really is. In the world of Lost Highway, it's what's going through his mind in this traumatic moment. You could believe it's when the cops are about to arrest him, or as Maya McBriar talks about, that he's in the electric chair and he's actually being fried. And this snap happens that makes him fantasize that he was this younger guy who could fix cars and had beautiful women this way and that way, and he just dreams this other life where none of these bad things happen. And then of course everything starts coming in. I mean, I've got no idea what it really means in real life, but in the world of Lost Highway, that's what it means to me.
Yeah, I like that. I love that actually, and I love the idea that Pete is almost like a better version of, well, certainly a better alternative to the reality that he appears to be in.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, and as you age, sometimes that happens too. You know, you think backwards and you think to your younger self, or a younger self, or a different self, or a justified self. So like, for instance, if his girl was like held at gunpoint or something, or kidnapped, you know, and forced into this like disgusting lifestyle, or you know, or whatever,
Right.
this depravity setting, and you find out, and you have the chance to like to knock that mother off, you know, like you're feeling pretty damn justified. And that's
Right.
the most normal feeling in the world for most people, I would think. Definitely for most men. Like, somebody messes with your daughter, messes with your wife or whatnot, you are justified to, not necessarily to like, you know, kill and torture or anything, but so what I'm saying is he does create like a just,
Right.
he wasn't wrong, so to speak, you know, even though obviously in reality he almost certainly was. So that's kind of interesting. That helped me, because I didn't see that the first time I watched the movie. I didn't know exactly what was happening, and I didn't see that this was like a sort of maybe like a retelling of his current or past situation. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, in many ways, he does it in Mulholland Drive. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a different way of doing it, where you see the good thing first,
Mm,
and then you see the bad version.
yeah.
This one, it sort of starts with the bad version, and he kills her, and then things go nice, but it does come back around. They're very similar, which is why I
Mhm.
think Lost Highway is easier to understand after you see Mulholland Drive.
And maybe after you've seen like The Return, possibly. Did did like studying this film or writing about it, or you know, or just immersing yourself in it, did it influence your did it affect your interaction with Twin Peaks, or even just Twin Peaks The Return in any way? Or
No,
does it give you any new thoughts or anything like that?
nope, I don't think it does. But I feel like Twin Peaks is like so in me. I don't, it'd be really hard for something to shake Twin Peaks for me, or to feel like, oh, now I get it. It is about the bunnies. It's just unlikely. I know there are people who want to connect every Lynch film to everything
Yeah.
he's done. I'm not that person. Like, I
Hmm.
really look at Lost Highway as its own thing, that um in that way. Yeah, so I don't think it really did change or open my mind to anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. But thinking very briefly about Twin Peaks, I'm gonna share one more thing on my screen, and uh, I'm gonna read this just because I recently learned that some people only hear these interviews in audio form. So what we have on the screen here is, I believe, what was written at the top of the first version of the script for Lost Highway,
Yep.
and it's 4 lines, and it reads as follows: it reads, Lost Highway, a 21st century noir horror film, a graphic investigation into parallel identity crises, a world where time is dangerously out of control, a terrifying ride down the Lost Highway. David Lynch, June 21st, 1995. So that's interesting, because you put that in your book. I had never seen that before. Does that make you like, I don't know, think about anything or feel a certain way when you see that?
Well, I mean, the parallel identity crisis certainly explains what we were talking about, where he manufactures this other person. Um, And I think time is out of control because either he's being incarcerated or being electrocuted, however you want to view it. His time is up, basically. But it is interesting that he put it there because no one's ever going to see that. You know, it was really there for the actors, one would think.
Prepare to hate me because I'm going to put you on the spot. All right.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm going to do a parallel version here, and I'm going to
Okay.
type Twin Peaks: The Return. Now I have the same amount of space here underneath Twin Peaks: The Return. What would the 4 lines be that might have been written at the top of that script?
So I would say, so you want me to give you these 4, right?
I do, yeah. Like, see these 4 lines here?
Yeah, I got you. I just didn't know if we were
cool.
working on this together or I'm
Oh, we
supposed to
can, but you
myself.
start.
To me, it would say a new look without nostalgia at an old TV show. Can that be the first one?
Sure. Yeah.
Are you supposed to be typing these?
No, I have it in my head. It's
Okay.
recorded. It's recorded.
I thought you were going to type them.
Yeah.
The second one would be the duality of kindness and evil. Because to me, that's so much of the Dougie and the Mr. C, or whatever you want to call it, evil Cooper.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to say a golden orb of love comes to our universe. And I think the last one would probably be a justification that James was always cool.
There it is. The secret has been revealed. Yeah, cool. That was nice.
But I mean, to me, those are the themes more than anything. You know, the Dougie kindness aspect is always very fascinating to me, and probably my favorite part of The Return. I'm not saying Dougie's my favorite part of The Return, but the kindness aspect is.
Say more.
Well, I just think the fact that he turns the Mitchum brothers, the Tom Sizemore character, which is so sad that he passed away. And even Janie, you know, she becomes so much less harsh, although it certainly is, it's women don't come out the greatest in Twin Peaks: The Return. I mean, I wouldn't say wives come out on top in Twin Peaks: The Return, but she certainly is softened, and I like that. My favorite part of The Return is part 3. I'm just obsessed with everything about that room. I tried to think of something to throw part 3 in there, but I was like, you'd just be picking one part that really has nothing to do with everything.
Yeah, when I show somebody little bits of Twin Peaks who hasn't watched it, and I want to just see if they might be interested, you know, and they're like kind of interesting people in general, I show that scene just to see what happens, you know, like the first couple minutes of it, because if you like that, you're you're good to go, you know, you're gonna keep the rest. And then of course with my own family, we're Italian Americans from New Jersey and have a big casino history. I'll show them, you know, Mr. Jackpots, and everybody goes up the wall for that, you know. That's like everybody's dream come true. But what's up with the curtains in Lost Highway, in your opinion? I know there's curtains in their home, and well, and I don't know. Do you think anything when I say curtains?
Not for Lost Highway. I mean, I think the curtains were there to block the light so he could disappear into the darkness, which is a shot that I spent a lot of time in the book about, because it really is the shot of the movie. And it was interesting to find out, I didn't know this, maybe other people knew, but I had never heard this before, but that the material is the same as the Red Room curtains. Peter Deming did say that. To me, that was like a nice little, ooh, cool. But as far as a connection, I don't see it. I know there is, like, David Lynch loves curtains. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't get into, like, every time he's used the spotlight, or every time, like, I don't know. I like to view the movies just as themselves, not connecting them all the way through.
Do you find that well, anything could happen, like, in somebody's mind, including, a million things that can happen out in the real world. So do you find the videotapes in Lost Highway to be, like, symbolic or anything? Or are they playing multiple roles, in your opinion? What's up with that? If you want to talk about it.
I mean, I really think the videotapes, I'm almost leaning towards they don't exist at all. That is something he has made up to justify this outside person that has actually killed his wife. I have a feeling there were no videotapes. If there was a videotape, it really was a realtor that maybe was trying to sell a house. But I don't take any of the things you see. He's an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe in the videotapes, but I don't think it matters. Someone could not. It's not like a major plot point.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly seem to be associated with thought to some extent, because the first mention of a video camera is replied with, like, his famous line about memory, and
Right.
how I like to think about things. Speaking of unreliable narrator, there is a little line in your book that I loved, and that was, the only reliable narrator in Twin Peaks might be the music. That was cool.
I've always thought that the sound, it's more than the music, it's the sound.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Because it's the and when you hear the electricity, so you always have to pay very close attention to the sound in everything that David does, and even that's true of Lost Highway as well.
You're not going to like the next question, because you've
wait.
kind of already answered it, in terms of you prefer things in their isolated state. But is there like any tulpa stuff in Lost Highway?
I mean, I don't think so.
Oh,
I don't think there is. I personally don't think there's a connection between Renee and Alice, for real, or even mystical. It is 100% made up on his part. He just turned his wife into this blonde, and that's it. I think Lost Highway is not that mystical.
Sabrina Sutherland, and I'm not going to spoil too much of the book, but she had an interesting line saying, like, she doesn't, like, know what David Lynch has over people, but everybody wants to perform, and, like, everybody wants his approval, and is, like, kind of vying for his attention, and these are accomplished human beings, adults,
Right.
successful people. I just thought that was such an interesting quote. I bet you did too, when you heard her say that.
Yeah, and I've gotten that from interviewing these people. I mean, they love David. They love him. I've never heard a bad thing from anyone who's talked about him. They just want to make him happy. And that really is interesting. And if Sabrina doesn't know why, how could I answer that question? She doesn't know why. I think it's because he's trying to get something in his head out, and they just want to help him.
Yeah, and I always like that way he says, you have an idea, and then you kind of have to like get it into its final form, so to speak, in whatever medium it turns out to be. I guess that there's nothing really super profound about that. I just like that way of looking at it. And you describe yourself as very like filled with ideas. Do you have any thought? Do you have any sense of like where they come from? Are they yours? Are they kind of like collective ideas in some way? Are they and how do you know how to bring them to fruition?
I think because I pay attention to a lot of things and I'm always thinking and looking at things from a different angle, and I'm just not like everyone else. That's one of the things that I've sort of learned. I mean, I know no one's the same, but I can tell from people's reaction when I'm not even trying. I just thought like that's how I viewed it. And then people are like,
Mhm.
that's crazy. It's just sort of how we all interpret the world that's around us, I think.
Do you like the world?
I mean, it's fine, I guess. I love that there's music in it. I mean, and laughter and things like that. But I mean, the world's kind of a crappy place right now.
Yeah, I keep hearing that. Yeah, and to be dead honest, I wonder how accurate that is. It's obviously if you're looking for it, it's there. I mean, no doubt about it. But
Mhm.
but I wonder how much crappier it is than like different eras. Other, I mean, I graduated high school in the '90s, and a lot of people refer to that time as somewhat of like a heyday. Uh, Sort of maybe like a nirvana, so to speak, no pun intended. And I'm sure
Right.
a lot of other people don't, but I don't know. I think the world is always a little bit mixture,
Right.
bad
I
and good,
definitely. It's just now things are amplified.
amplified. Yeah. Um, do you get along? You don't have to answer this. Do you get along with your kids?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like being a dad, and I've always had fun every day. I believe in only having fun. Like I never wanted things to be miserable. My son does our books for
Mm.
FMP and Blue Rose, and the daughters have always helped pack up things. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely a family of pitching in and helping.
Who deserves credit for that? Each member of the family, or does one member of the family deserve more credit?
Well, definitely my wife deserves all the credit because
Yeah.
she has the real job that gets us health insurance and goes to work
Mm.
and keeps all of that going. So that's, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do anything if it wasn't for her. I mean, she's the one that supported me. Like I was never published before we were married and things like
Mm.
that. So, I mean, it's all been great from there. But I think as a family, we get along well,
Mhm.
and it's fun. Yeah, I think everyone has fun.
So I guess you answered my second question, but uh, that's really nice, by the way, to hear. I also like my family, and I think most of them like me more often than not. Um, do you have any like I don't know, no secrets, no tips or tricks or anything, but do you just have anything to offer as far as the family thing goes or the parent thing goes?
Um, I mean, I don't ever lie to the kids. I'm sometimes brutally honest, and sometimes they can take that. I'm also super funny with them. I'm critical of them being
Mm.
funny as well. Like if they tell me a story, I'll be like, if you wouldn't have mentioned that you didn't have a jack in the trunk, then maybe I wouldn't have known you were going to get a flat tire. Like
Okay.
leave that part out when you tell that story. Um, but I don't know. I think being nice and teaching and showing kindness then makes everyone else be kind.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's good. It's
And
good.
also, never ask your kids what happened at school today. Ask them who cried at school today. That's the question I ask them every day when they get home.
Yeah.
Who cried at school today? And then they'll go, no one. Oh, well, Mary cried because she broke up. Oh, who'd she break up with? And all of a sudden, your kid's talking to you. If you say, how was school today? Fine.
Yeah. So you gotta point to some sort of drama or some sort of conflict or conflict aftermath or in media res storytelling, I guess, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
That's interesting. I had one last question that I wanted to ask you, and it's about Lost Highway, and there were a lot of cut scenes that you had access to, either via, I don't remember, but either via the script or through storytelling from your interviews. And that was very cool to read about, because you see how much can be gained when like puzzle pieces are removed, or sometimes simply how the pacing could be just improved or maintained.
Right.
But would you say there were both benefits and drawbacks to the cut stuff, to the missing pieces, so to speak, in Lost
I'm
Highway?
actually glad of all the cuts. I think almost all of them were good. There was one shot of the morgue that it said the camera stayed on the floor and there was a burning cigarette in a drain, and you just saw feet going by of the mortician and things. And I would have liked to have seen that scene. That would have been cool, because it just sounds like a David Lynch scene, you know? I mean, it would be cool to see an entire morgue scene from the floor.
Yeah.
But did it fit in the movie? You know, it really didn't, because why would he imagine that scene? So everything that was cut, I think, backs up the idea that this is just in Bill Pullman's mind. So they were good cuts.
My favorite little scene in the movie, like sort of probably not important, is when after Pete is located in the jail and his parents have to come either to the prison or to the police station to pick him up or to give a statement, I forget which. But they walk in, they both have their dark shades on. And at some point they slowly take their sunglasses off. And that's the end of the scene. Like, there's no dialogue at all.
Right.
And I just love it. I don't know if it's like important in any way. You know, it establishes some character and whatnot. But it's just so great that it cuts like as soon as the glasses come off.
Uh-huh.
You have any like little like quirky little scenes in this movie, or maybe even in a different one?
Well, I mean, when Crispin Glover says, "I'm making my lunch" in Wild at Heart, oh, I love that scene. I love the whole Crispin Glover part of Wild at Heart.
Incredible.
For Lost Highway, Patricia Arquette getting out of that cab in that dress, man. I've never seen anything as beautiful as that captured on film. I mean, that is an incredible scene.
With a nice soundtrack too. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you think there's maybe anything that would have been more penetrating or more controversial or more provocative or more interesting that I could have asked you that you would have wanted to talk about?
No, you did a great job. I say cut everything I said. Let's not post this. At the beginning, you said I could cut anything I wanted to. So I've decided cut all of me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I thought it was a great conversation. I appreciate your kind words about the book and questions about outside of that. Usually I'm just blabbing about David Lynch, and I got to talk about all kinds of crazy things. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Did you enjoy talking about yourself?
No. No.
You know, I found it very interesting when you talked about how like how you don't have any pride or I know this is hyperbole, but no, there's no pride here. There's no confidence. There's no pleasure and there's no happiness. That's basically the summary as I
yes. And isn't that how it should be? Just get your work done and keep going. Yes, that's right. Keep feelings out of it. Exactly. Now you're getting it.
There we go. Well, what a pleasure for me, at least, and I assume you enjoyed as well.
Yes, it was so, you're very kind, and you did a great job. I had a wonderful time. And now the important part is telling people you can go to bluerosemag.com and purchase the Lost Highway book. It will be in color. We only have a limited amount. I'm not doing a reprint. When these are gone, we'll get it up on Amazon in black and white. But if you want the good version, you got to get it now.
That's right. So yeah, I'll be sure to pump that up, because I am somebody who read it and I sincerely enjoyed it. And like I was saying earlier, I think it's nice for the casual fan. It's good for the sort of the intense or the expert fan. And it's also interesting just from a movie making point of view, for somebody who maybe has a little bit of knowledge or not much knowledge, just to see how these things are done. And it was cool. So it was cool in many regards, and I really appreciate you giving me that sneak peek of the book. I enjoyed it a great deal. I enjoyed talking with you, and I hope to keep in touch. All right.
Of course. And when we get
Yeah.
that Blue Rose up and running, I will contact you and you can write about the innovations of the return. I mean, why do we get someone else to do it? You'll do it.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll at least tweet about it, because that might be as much as I can handle. All right. We'll talk, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, really great to see you. And we'll keep in touch. Thanks, Scott.
Meh.
Okay, bye-bye.